Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I would imagine there might be a few others that might trickle in. But I'm Daria Hall. I'm the chair of the BIPOC committee with X Minds, the Partnership for Extraordinary Minds. I know that some of you may be familiar, some of you may not. If you're new, welcome. We hold these chats every month, the first Monday of every month. And X Minds is a nonprofit organization that provides resources and support to families and educators and young people experiencing autism in Montgomery County. And we're celebrating our 15th year this year, providing this different services to the community. All of our programming is free, and we invite you to keep coming back. So for anyone new, welcome. If you don't mind, can you use the chat and just drop where in Montgomery County you are? If it's Silver Spring or Gaithersburg, just drop it, where you are, and then also the age of your child or person in your care who has been diagnosed with autism. That would help maybe our guest speakers today to just get a little sense of who's in the room. So again, if you're just joining us, welcome. The quick icebreaker is just using the chat to drop where in Montgomery County or where in the metro area you are, and then the age of your young person that has been diagnosed with autism. All right, and as you all do that, and I'll put mine in the chat here as well. And as you all do that, we are happy to welcome two guest speakers today. We have Officers Laurie Reyes and Amy Stoughton, who are here to speak with our group about the Montgomery County Police Autism and Intellectual Developmental Disabilities Alzheimer's Dementia Outreach Program. The program has been expanded beyond wandering prevention to create a multi-level approach to provide education to the community, follow-up, outreach, empowerment, and response, support to families and people with a disability. And they are here to just talk a little bit more about their outreach program, what they do, how it works, and to give you some space to ask questions. Sometimes these kind of conversations are good in smaller groups. So please take advantage, and you can always drop your questions in the chat along the way, and they will circle back to those questions at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, Laurie and Amy, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'll just be your guide on the deck. Let me know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I am Officer Laurie Reyes, and I actually created this program in 2004. So 20 years ago this year. I've been a Montgomery County police officer for 27 years, and I'm going to let my partner, Officer Amy Stoughton, kind of introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Officer Amy Stoughton. I have also been a Montgomery County police officer for 27 years. Laurie and I actually went to the police academy together, so we went through that together. I've been up here in this unit for approximately 2 years, and I absolutely love it, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
Thank you, Amy. So Amy did come to us from a patrol capacity, and she came 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago now, not really knowing a lot about the autism community, and she's learned so much that sometimes, I'm on calls with her and I think, wow, she gets the lingo, she gets the advocacy. So just to have her be here with the unit, she's just really made, we can share with you tonight what she's done to even improve more outreach within the unit. So next slide, please. And I'm going to put my glasses on. These are some foldable glasses. They're not the coolest, but they serve the job. So our unit, for those of you who don't know, or maybe you're on this call and the first time you're hearing of it, we are very fortunate. Again, 2004 created this unit, and it's the only one of its kind in the nation. Some are getting better as far as having specific units for this, but we're really lucky in being the pioneers, and I have great officers that I've been able to work with. So our unit, as Daria said, we provide outreach, action. I say forget awareness. we're about action. Empowerment, follow-up. Amy's going to talk about just, gosh, so we handle probably 600-700 follow-ups a year, reaching out to families after involvement with law enforcement. Education and response. That's the core, that is the core of the program. And here's the thing, in 2005, 2004-ish, we were really trying to address wandering elopement. But now with an increase in prevalency and age, we're seeing calls of a more serious nature. I'll kind of talk about that now, not just wandering elopement, but our guys being, in crisis, and the challenges, that officers need to be aware of, and how they can have a positive, safe interaction with our folks. So next slide. This is like the question, what are we doing as police officers, as a community, to support those who have autism and other disabilities? So next slide. All right, so most important, our officer training. For a long time, people said, well, how did you get your training, Lori? And I started by just immersing myself in the community. I would show up in uniform to conferences. We're fortunate to be so close to NIH, to work with organizations like Pathfinders for Autism and Autism Speaks. So I had a lot of opportunities to learn from caregivers and individuals and professionals and academics. So we teach our officers. We teach all of our incoming recruits. Amy and I are doing that this week. Our CIT officers, which is our mental health officers, we include them as well. We also teach our search and rescue officers, right? You got to have officers that understand the dynamics of searching for individuals who have autism. But here's the thing about that. They probably handle close to 6,000 calls a year for individuals who are critically at risk. So they have a lot of opportunity through experience that they have searching for, interacting with those who have autism and IDD, and they just do a tremendous job. Recent concerns. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir on this call. We are seeing, as I said, the increase in age and prevalency, but we're also seeing folks that just don't have the resources, right? They're not getting, the coverage for the care that they need for their loved ones. So that puts Amy and I in a position of sometimes advocating for care. I mean, things that regular law enforcement wasn't doing 20 years ago, we're doing. We're giving police reports, or we're saying what happened to those to insurance or DDA. We're working with schools to say, hey, you've got to come up with something in schools. So we're really kind of a broad approach in all kind of all areas. Next slide. Our community partnerships. We are, again, so fortunate. I think Amy and I both have big mouths, and we talk to everyone. So we've developed these partnerships over the course of time that have led to outreach that's phenomenal. Pathfinders for Autism, doing mock traffic stops with individuals who have disabilities. Autism Speaks, Down Syndrome Network, National Center for Missing Exploited Children, so we can provide on a national level wandering safety tips. We work with Adult Protective Services and Child Protective Services and Department of Aging and Disability, and on a national level, Department of Justice, right? Making sure other agencies are also trained and on what we have to offer, we think is valid. So we want to provide that nationally. Amy and I were just at the Bureau of Justice Administration this summer, providing as part of a workshop on law enforcement and the autism IDD community with the ARC, national ARC, people that have big voices that can make change in training and legislation that truly has an impact. Next slide. So some of our events, outreach, Amy and I are so lucky. We get to do a lot of cool stuff. Our supervisors just say, okay, just go ahead with it. And so Amy and I are in schools. I mentioned before, we do our Pathfinders. We work with Pathfinders for Autism all the time. We just had our Public Safety Day. They put us front and center. Amy and I probably talked to like 200, 300, 400 people. Now, I'm going to let Amy, because this is part of our outreach, do a brief overview Amy, kind of like your follow-ups. How many do you do, and what do you do it for?
So last year I had approximately 500 some follow-ups, and basically what my follow-ups consist of, anytime our Montgomery County police officers are respond to, whether it be a young person with autism that's wandered from home, or even the school, what we do afterward, or what Laurie and I do afterwards, is we reach out to the family. And quickly, I'll go through a couple of things we do. The biggest thing that I love to do is just being that support for those parents, because we all know how traumatic it can be when their child is missing and they don't know where they are. So just calling, sometimes just the phone call itself is so therapeutic for these caregivers. The biggest thing, the most important thing I'm telling caregivers, please call 911 immediately. That's the first thing you have to do. A lot of parents sometimes are scared to call 911, or they might feel guilty, think they're going to get into trouble, or we're going to turn them into CPS, APS. That's not the case. And I just do a lot of reassuring to let them know that, hey, we have probably 3 to 8 fines a week. This is normal. It's okay to call 911. And guess what? If you locate your child in the next 30 seconds, no big deal. Just pick up the phone and call 911 back. Then what I do is I cover safety tips for in the home, such as installing door alarms, chimes on windows and doors, cameras in the home, just alerting families, alerting them that maybe a door or window has been opened, maybe during the middle of the night when they least expect it. We provide stop signs to put on doors and windows in the house to remind kids not to go out. We talk about roadid.com, which is a bracelet that these youngsters can wear if they can tolerate. Some have sensory issues and
And adults too.
Sorry,
Yeah.
and adults too. Actually, runners can wear them. It's something that it's a simple, you can buy it online, bracelet, excuse me, that if something happens, it has an emergency contact and number. We talk about neighbor letters, informing your neighbors if you're comfortable, letting your neighbors know, hey, my child, my adult has autism, IDD. If you see them out alone, please call me or call 911. We talk about what to say when you do call 911, having that script ready of what information to provide to the call taker, having a picture ready for the police when they get there. We also provide safety kits, which will include our safety t-shirt for those who are in crisis or who have autism or IDD who may get lost. It's a shirt that says, if you see me, I have autism, please call 911.
And Amy, we have that on the upcoming slides.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, a picture.
And we do a lot of, last thing I'll say, we do a lot of home visits also if we have someone who's really in crisis and maybe wandering once a week or so. So I won't go into anything further. We might catch up later.
Yeah, no. And I just want to say, I mean, part of what Amy does and what we do is trying to say to a parent that's had an episode of, well, be it wandering, elopement, or crisis, what do you need? How can we help you? So, and we're gonna talk, Amy's gonna talk more about kind of the summer safety tips as well, and then kind of review that. That's part of the follow-up. So just some more outreach. This is Amy and I after we presented at Gaithersburg Middle School, and we presented to the entire school. Sometimes we present just to individuals in our autism IDD classrooms. In this case, we did a whole presentation for the entire Gaithersburg Middle School on, why does Montgomery County Police have an autism IDD unit, and what can you do as a middle school student to make the lives of those who are navigating this world while having autism or any disability, intellectual developmental disability, just look out for those individuals. Because why? Because all of us have days that we might need somebody to look out for us, right? We're not singling out those students. We're just saying basically like a be kind presentation, and we are kind of trying to lead by example. So Amy mentioned our follow-up contacts, and we continually partner with MCPS all the time, either through in the schools with specific crisis or incidences, or more broadly through general presentations to our students. And we try to be kind of a liaison, just saying, hey, what can we do to help? Even articulating safety or information to add to an IEP, whatever the case may be. Okay, so Amy, this is you. This is kind of like what you're providing to families in bullet form. We got to be mindful of time, but kind of like a little overview, and we're going to go through summer wandering, elopement prevention and response. Like, what are you telling families, Amy?
Well, a lot of times, especially now with summer and it's warmer out, people want to be outside. So we're seeing such an increase in the amount of wandering elopement incidents we're having. So it's just educating families on what they can do in the home to prevent these things from happening. Drowning is the leading cause of death. I talk a lot about getting those children or getting those adults into swim lessons, because a lot of times when they're wandering, they're attracted to water. Again, the calling 911 is the most important thing. Wearing that ID bracelet, because our officers are trained and they know to look for this. If they have someone wandering, that's the first thing we're looking for. Whether it's a bracelet they might be wearing, something attached to their shoe, something written in their tag of their clothing. Our officers get a lot of training. Again, that script, knowing exactly what to say when you're calling 911, that's very important, because it's even calling 911 itself is a scary thing to occur, especially when your child is missing. We talk about self-disclosure a lot, making sure that when your parents call 911, you are telling that call taker, my child, my loved one has IDD. Not saying mild disability, moderate disability, but really telling the call taker exactly what that child or adult, can they cross the street? Do they know public transportation? Will they try to get food, or will they just hunker down and hide until someone finds them? These are all important things that you want to tell the call taker. So we're constantly reminding them what to say and having that script ready.
Next slide. Thanks, Amy.
Or...
No, I was laughing at at the message that came up for having it from when
11 years
Zion was
later.
11. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
So no, and so Amy, keep going here. So this is just more tips on, and Amy, we can kind of go through. Like Amy said, don't wait to call 911. Be prepared to have that full description ready. Take a deep breath, because you're going to be nervous. And I think another important thing Amy said was, make sure that you relay the diagnosis immediately and in common language. Don't, like Amy said, don't use words like moderately impacted. Just say, will they cross the street? All of those things Amy mentioned. And really important, if your loved one's missing, make sure somebody stays at the house, because officers are going to respond to the home. They're probably going to have to search the house once or twice, because inevitably our guys can be found hiding, and then officers would have had a full-blown search. So they do search the house. But make sure that, again, most important thing is never waiting to call 911. Even if, holy smokes, you have that moment, I fell asleep, I've been sleeping an hour, and your adult's gone, your child's gone, make sure that it's not about, the word honest isn't fair, but make sure you're completely forthcoming with exactly how long your loved one's been gone. If it's been 2 hours, you can say, holy smokes, I took a shower, I took a nap, and it has been 2 hours. But just make sure that you share that, not only with you, but aunts, uncles, grandparents, kids, other siblings. We sometimes have people in our care for hours at a time because the siblings didn't call to report because they were thinking they're going to get in trouble. So just make sure it's okay if it's not okay if it happens, but if it does happen, just call right away and make sure officers are en route. So next slide.
I think just
ahead,
to
Amy.
hit on that one more thing, just so everyone understands, the reason we ask for anyone that calls 911 in this situation to be open as far as how long that the child or adult's been missing is because our officers out there, when that call is dispatched, they're going to set up a perimeter. And if you tell the officer, oh, they're going to be gone 15 minutes, that perimeter is going to be a lot smaller than if you say, oh, they've been gone an hour or 2 hours. The perimeter that our officers are going to set up is going to be much larger. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood why that is so important.
Good point. And I'll share this too. We have what's called a managed search operations team, and it's comprised of 3 or 4 officers and 1 or 2 main. And one of them, our K9 officer, this man, John Green, is just amazing. He is amazing. And he will text us pictures of kiddos or adults they find so that Amy and I can try to figure out who that kid is or who that adult is. But he has such compassion and he's just such a kind person that we're really fortunate to have someone like that. So when you call 911, know that you're getting people and you're getting officers who get it. So just wanted to share that. Next slide. So our unit, one of the parts when we talk about, well, what's the follow-up consist of? Sometimes it's Amy and I going to the home and talking about different strategies with an individual. You know, why wouldn't you want to? You're talking about, well, why shouldn't you elope? And we do this to each and every person's specific cognitive level, right? Maybe the home visit is just for an individual that needs to have an interaction with law enforcement when it's not stressful. Or maybe that individual needs a conversation about being safe on the internet because they're sending pictures that could be, you know, either get them in trouble or get themselves, you know, into a dangerous situation. Other things we do is we do a lot of coordination with MCPS, and we try to do this for individuals that have wandered all the way up to those who are in crisis. So next slide. We're running good on time. This is just our never underestimate side. This is Mr. M, who had 131 elopements. Yes, 131. We teach our officers this as well. He put a bedroll into the comforter and and managed to elope from his group home. But we've had a lot of elopements with him, and we keep at it. But we share this because you never underestimate a person who has autism or IDD. All right, next slide. And we're going to get to these questions, I promise. So tracking. I have a love-hate relationship with tracking. If you're looking into tracking, we don't provide it anymore. It is just too much of a liability for a police department to provide tracking because tracking's not 100%. And, you know, law enforcement isn't always 100% either, but you don't want to provide a tool that's going to track to a tragedy. So what we provide is us being there and these other strategies and all of that. So if you go the technology route, just really do your homework. That's all we're saying. And then there's options like through list grants. There's ways of purchasing devices like that, but just really, really do your homework. And here's the other thing. Just because you have a tracking device on, never, ever, ever wait to call 911 because it's not perfect technology. And we don't want to track to a tragedy. So technology is the last step after everything else. So we're going to get to the questions. I promise a few more slides and we're going to get to them. Thank you for submitting them. Next slide. Self-disclosure. Amy kind of hit on this a little bit. When we teach our individuals, be it elementary all the way up to those that are at Montgomery College, College for Learning, we really talk a lot, or those that are driving. We talk about self-disclosure, and of course it's a personal choice, but letting officers know immediately that you're a person who has autism, even if it's the only word that you're getting out because you've lost all words, it's so important, especially as our guys are getting bigger and behaviors could be misunderstood. So working with your loved one to identify as a person who has autism, if you feel comfortable, to first responders is really important. Next slide. This is our safety kit. So the safety kit, the t-shirt in the safety kit is really designed only for those that cannot speak and are in immediate danger. We're really, really purposeful in who we provide this to. So it is designed truly to keep those who are at risk immediately should they wander or elope safe. That's the whole goal, and our officers know to look for it. So just some contents of our safety kit. Next slide. Here is a QR code of our brochure. You simply hold your phone over it and take a picture and our website pops up. I would suggest maybe just take a picture of this slide and you can save it for future reference. If you pull up this QR code, it has our website as well as our PDF brochure that contains the 911 script that we updated. It also contains the neighbor letter and a whole back page of resources, community resources that we have the hyperlinks to, all the ones that we mentioned tonight. So that's the QR code. And then on the next slide, I think I have our unit for, there's our website. So you could always copy that, but the best is probably, even if you were looking, you can just do a web search of Montgomery County Police Autism IDD, and it should be the first page that that comes up. And Amy just shared her cell phone number. This is our emails, and we always suggest that if you had a question or concern, email both of us, because that way you're sure that one of us will get back to you. And you can definitely reach out, and we're pretty good at a pretty good turnaround time. Both Amy and I are pretty much 24/7. So, okay, I think that's the last slide. Maybe one more. I don't know. Let's see. It's a mystery. I think so. And if not, we can open it.
I think that's it.
Okay, let's open it up to those questions.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Amy. That was a lot of information you all shared. Really appreciate you giving us a really good overview. I think it's just really helpful for families to know that you exist and the resources you provide. We do have a few questions. Neil asked, how can MCPD provide adequate support for members of the autism community, considering the budget and staffing shortages that are happening right now? If you can speak to that. And then he did have a follow-up question around the ID bracelet, and if MCPD has a database where you track families with young people or adults with an autism diagnosis.
Wow, man, he's making me earn my money tonight. Okay, so we'll start backwards. The database is something that we're looking into, and in full disclosure, I have some reservations about a database, and I'll share them. Nothing wrong with the database, but I'll share this. It's not CSI Miami. In most cases, and I'll share why. In most cases, we come up with we interact with an individual who we don't know at all, right? We don't have a first name, we don't have a last name. So having a database doesn't do us a whole lot of good, because we're trying to decide, who is this person? So having a database is a false sense of security a little bit for me, because, not to say it's a layer. Let's say you have a layer of a database, but also with the understanding that the database isn't the answer for all, because most times we're coming across individuals that either can't identify themselves, or we just don't know who they are or what their name is. So for that reason, we say work on things like self-disclosure. If an individual will tolerate an ID bracelet, utilize that. Neighbor letter, let your neighbors know, so that if they get the call, they're familiar with your loved one, and they can say, oh, that's John, and he's outside, and I know who he is. So it has to be a total approach. Now, the other part of that question, help a girl. What was that one? What was the first part?
Oh, there's about just navigating budget challenges and staffing shortages. Yeah.
Okay, so we've been so fortunate. We've been very fortunate that we have such support. But in this era of change with shortages of law enforcement, it's really important that you share your support to county council folks about how important a unit like this is, and how having more officers in this unit would be beneficial. It's really important to share. Don't just assume that it's just always going to be around, because we're coming up into some could be challenging times. So it's important to share. If you truly feel the impact of the unit, that you voice that. That's always important. And then I know there was one more part of that.
Where can they share that information, Laura? If you or Amy can drop that in the chat, is there an email address or a website?
So that would be through just the county council.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be your council members. Whoever your council member is in your district, you would reach out to them and just let them know, what your feelings are about continuing such outreach.
On the ID bracelet, is I imagine, do families have to come out of pocket to get this? Is it subsidized by the state or by the county in any way? You know,
So
how
you
can
could
families
part,
obtain one?
yeah, so a couple of different ways. So you can always apply, if you applied for that Lottery of a List grant, and that's in our brochure, the LISS grant through Maryland. That is in the back page of our brochure, the Low Intensity Support Services grant in Maryland, LISS, if you Google LISS Maryland. And that LISS grant is a lottery. So you can, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get that money, but you apply for a LISS grant. And that's for all different kinds of supports. Is that fencing? Is that alarms? Families determine with approval through the list approvers what it can be spent on, and certainly apply to getting a ID bracelet would be one of those ways. But if you also reach out to like most companies, I think they have kind of some subsidies. So roadid.com, it's not that we endorse them. I think it's important for you guys to know that we don't endorse. It's just that many of our guys utilize those because they're pretty durable. So you could always go on their sites and see if they have subsidies for individuals, because your purposes are for autism and IDD.
Got it. Thank you. And then I know you mentioned safety kits. It sounds like you're very particular about who gets that, but I imagine that's a free service to certain families. What about the safety alarm? I guess the same question. Are there subsidies or discounts that families who need this, added to them? Because that can be very costly. I'm just curious if there are ways that families can better navigate that to get support.
Yeah, same for that. So that would be through the LIST grant or
Okay.
through maybe Department of Aging and Disability, but I'm pretty sure I know for sure if you are approved for the LIST grant, you can apply, you can use that LIST grant for alarms, for any safety devices that would be deemed approvable. So alarms, cameras, security systems, people use the LIST grant to get Ring cameras on their houses or
Hmm.
apartments or townhouses. So yeah, there's definitely avenues that you can go through in the LIST grant. Most of our folks have success in, maybe you don't get it the first round of the year, but you get it in the second. There's two. So there's 2 times a year where you apply to enter the lottery for a LIST grant.
Thank you. And I dropped that link to the list grant in the chat for anyone who is interested. Does anything change in terms of reporting when our artistic child turns 18 and becomes an adult?
No, well, as soon, what do you mean? Like, what kind of reporting? So, like, what do you mean?
Melanie, feel free to jump in to clarify. I know this is your question, but I would imagine it's, once they become an adult and they do something, but they have this diagnosis, how were they handled? What does the process look like for them with this diagnosis, despite being 18 or older?
Yeah, so there is always, so we do a lot of outreach, and there are times when we're navigating an individual who is 18 that is on the autism spectrum that's committed a crime. And I think all factors have to be taken into consideration. It's really about navigating with our state's attorney's office to determine if any charges are applicable. And in most cases, Amy and I will navigate that with our state's attorney's office. We've had a couple of elopement situations where, for lack of a better description, a crime was committed, a young person eloped, they committed a crime, they were non-speaking and had autism. And some of the crimes were pretty significant. And we do work with state's attorney's office and they get it too, they get it. But there are times when they're navigating, determining an individual's cognitive level in the course of that crime. So this is a whole new area where when we talk about us being at the Department of Justice or Bureau of Justice Administration, this is a national effort through ARC. I mean, this is a national effort for our folks who have disabilities, many cases specifically autism, that we're figuring out, is this person going to be charged, or how are we navigating this? So to answer that question, yes, things change when they turn 18, but it's all about documenting cognitive behavior, keeping, previous IEPs, making sure that you're documenting as a caregiver that any possible diagnosis or supports in place. But that's the challenge right now, as that's one of those current things that officers are encountering is the calls for more serious nature, and how are we addressing that?
And Lori, not to interrupt, but one
Yeah.
thing, being in patrol for so long, this is so important. This is the other thing that I was trying to stress with being that advocate as the parent or whoever is calling 911. You think about a young child walking into a neighbor's house, not so scary. But then you think about a 19-year-old who's 6 foot, 200 some pounds, possibly has autism, and then possibly mental health concerns as well, which we're finding a lot. Take that example of walking into a home, which has happened, how scary that can be for someone. It makes a big difference when you're calling 911, letting that person know, hey, this person went into the neighbor's house, but he has autism. It's so important letting our officers know what we're dealing with, because what it looks like to us possibly is a home invasion robbery, where it really isn't. It's just someone with autism. So we train our officers, think autism, think autism. It's not necessarily someone on PCP or drugs. So it's just so important with that communication. We want everyone to be safe.
Amy, on
Yeah.
that, when someone does call 911 and they say my child is missing and he or she has autism, what then happens with, on the back end once that's been triggered?
So anytime we get a call in patrol where someone has autism, most of the time, and I can speak for experience in my beat especially, we had a lot of calls for kids with autism, and we had so many bodies of water out there in my beat. So the first thing that's going to happen, there's going to be one officer, one or two officers that's going to immediately go to the home where that last person saw the individual. At the same time that's happening, the rest of your shift and pretty much everyone is making that perimeter. They're getting on a map, pulling open that map book, looking to see where bodies of water are, and heading in those directions, spreading out, getting out of their cars and looking for the individual. That's why it's so important. We have the ability now, if a parent has a picture, we can get that picture out on everybody's computer so they can see what that child looks like. And we're all out looking. It's just such a time saver. So it's just.
But do the policemen out in the field, do they get a notation that says, autistic person? Like, how is it elevated amongst the police officers doing the work on the ground?
When that call goes out, it's dispatched as that. My child, autistic child is missing. This is what they're wearing. Last seen, certain amount of time, who last saw them, and so forth.
Got it. Neil, you want to jump in really quickly? And then we have like one or two more questions.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for doing this. I just had one question about elopement and utilization of UAV systems. Is that something that the department is? I'm sorry, UAS. Is that right? UAS. Is that something the department?
So unmanned vehicles. They do. We have a whole drone unit. We're very fortunate, Neil, that we have a whole drone unit. We're very, very fortunate. And the good thing is we don't have to utilize them a whole lot, but we have utilized them for a recent search last summer for a young kid in Lake Needwood. They utilized and they got the drones in use. So yeah, that we're really lucky. I'm telling you, our MSOT guys are the best of the best. When they show up, I think Amy and I, we can take a load off our shoulders, because they will stop. We work with park police, mounted unit. They bring ATVs out, but in most cases, that's not what we're doing. We're usually finding the kid or the adult and then getting them back. So thanks for that question, Neil. Thank you.
And then we had one more question from Roya. She asked, how would I report the name of my adult son with intellectual disabilities with the police and fire department? So if their service is needed, they are aware that there's a person with a disability who lives at this residence. I think this goes back to the database question, but in lieu of not having one, is there anything that parents can use or share information with?
So here's the most important thing, because the address, most people are calling from a cell phone. They're not calling from a landline. So there's no way that we're going to attach the address to a cell phone. you're calling from your house, but you're using your cell phone. Any information is only going to be attached to an address. So your best bet as a parent is to be ready to share any information immediately to 911 so that you're not relying on information being captured that's maybe not even accurate. Maybe your son wasn't aggressive 2 years ago and now they are, and officers would be relying on that information. So when you call 911, almost all of us are calling from our cell phones. Relay that information. And what Amy said, when you're calling, you got to be like that mama bear or papa bear, grandpa bear, and you have to take a deep breath and advocate and say what you need. You know, I need this. My son is in crisis. My son is missing. What do I need? And don't rely on information that's not up to date. So just keep that in mind, because if you're calling from your cell phone, it's not going to capture that information right away. Not right away, not immediately.
Also, a lot of times, just so you understand, the officers that are out there have certain beats that they work. So, and Laurie can share with you a call she overheard while she was driving home. Most of us out there, when we're working our beat, you get to know your neighborhood. And if a call goes out and you know the individual, you've dealt with them several times, a lot of times we're already knowing from experience of running calls at that address. And Laurie, you can, I don't know if you want to share that time you heard the officer say.
Yeah, good point, Amy. And so I did hear an officer get on scene of a home invasion robbery in progress. It was a naked 35-year-old. We did not know was non-speaking. And he ultimately went into the home of a mom and her 2 kids. And the first arriving officer on scene noticed that he was stemming. And she got over the air and said, he's stemming. I'm pretty sure he has nonverbal autism. I mean, that's training at its finest right there. So that's important. But the caregivers had not called to report him missing, and he was missing over 2 hours. So that's exactly what we're saying when you got to call 911.
So in short, and this is really important and helpful, there is no database the county has or maintains, right? The best bet is to be as detailed as possible when calling 911 and calling as soon as possible. And 911 will dispatch whether there's a need for police versus fire department. They will make that judgment call once they hear what the challenge or issue is.
Correct. You got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sometimes both.
Yeah, and I would imagine you did say that all new officers going in, as part of their training, autism is something that you all do talk with them about. Is the same goes for folks who are manning the 911 lines?
Yeah, so they also receive training. They have certain protocol, but it's and they're receiving it through, they're separate, but they receive it as well. They receive training as well as for wandering elopement and for general crisis.
Got it. Do we have any other questions from the community for Lori or Amy?
All right, man, we are on time.
We are. Thank you both
Yeah.
so much. Your information, thank you for dropping it in, Amy, into the chat. And I can share that around again in a separate sort of follow-up email. But thank you both for your time.